Is that you, John Wayne? Is this me? Hey guys, welcome to the video. That's such a random quote from... If you know what I'm quoting, put it in the comments. Um, anyways, today I'm talking about aspect ratios. Today I want to talk about Christopher Nolan. Because I'm going to put it very simply to open this video. And I know we're in the first few seconds of the video, but I'm not going to Melbourne to watch the Nolan intended version. My argument in this video is that aspect ratios matter, but also the way it's projected matters. And also I will talk about the 4K Blu-ray. I will talk about when it comes to 4K Blu-ray. But first let's talk about IMAX in Sydney. Sydney's IMAX, the one at Darling Harbour, the big one, the one that was at one time the biggest screen in the world before they demolished it and rebuilt something that's a laser projection. Now the new theatre is apparently state-of-the-art. It does sound and look great, but it doesn't have its film projector anymore. It's shown in 1:43:1. So when the Odyssey shows on that screen at Darling Harbour, it's correct aspect ratio, but it's not on film. It's not shown projected off film. There is a second IMAX, but I will talk about Sydney first. The Darling Harbour one's been sold out for months. Unless you're sitting right in front of the screen looking up like that, you're not going to really have an enjoyable experience when you go and see that movie in the front row, because all that's left is the front row tickets. I've looked. You can consistently get a ticket in the front row, but they're discounted heavily. Like, it's half price, essentially, if you want to see in that front row, because even IMAX know these seats are not the way to watch this movie. But I also want to talk about demand. Sydney has shown, and the Odyssey has shown, that there is demand to see something as an event. And as we've seen over the weekend, Spider-Man, Brand New Day, had the biggest box office opening in US history, but also one of the biggest worldwide. I think it's only second to Endgame, but it's basically already crossed the $1 billion mark. It's a $1 billion movie already at this point. But when you look at movies becoming an event, to think that Netflix about 2-3 years ago said, oh, nobody wants to go to cinemas, people want to enjoy this stuff at home, nobody wants to go to a cinema. And now we're having the box office spectacle that is a new Barbenheimer, essentially. You know, you have Spider-Man tearing up the box office in every other screen, and then you have the Odyssey showing in the big screens like IMAX, blowing people away with tickets sold out for months. This is what matters. And when I look at aspect ratios, when I look at what we see in Sydney, 1:43:1 is only really available at the Sydney Darling Harbour IMAX. There is a secondary IMAX in Sydney, that is Blacktown from my understanding, but that's shown in 1:90:1 aspect ratio, meaning you're going to have black bars, it's going to be cropped, you're not going to see the full image as Nolan intended, and it's also not showing off film. So this aspect ratio is 1:33:1. This is how a lot of old TV shows were broadcast. A lot of old TV shows are locked to this ratio because of how it was shot. But with Oppenheimer, and also the Odyssey, and with Interstellar, and with The Dark Knight, those IMAX scenes are a lot more in line with something like this. Now, also, what you're not seeing here is if I was going to make this 1:43:1, because this is a 1:33:1 image at the moment, 4:3, you'll see it change a little bit here. There might have to be some cropping to make the image take a bit more of the screen, you know. That's what I'm talking about. The IMAX screen is 1:43:1. So what I'm showing right now is a lot more in line with what 1:43:1 will look like. Now, obviously, you can tell the black bars are at the side. A lot of people won't like those. But I'm showing you what I mean. This is what it means. But back to the original video, because I don't want to shoot in this format too much. It's the way I intended. I don't know. Maybe I didn't. Back to you. Oh, why am I saying back to you? Back to me in my other video. Now, with the ones showing on film, because I know a lot of people have said, I've just went to the Randwick Ritz, or I went to the Hayden Orpheum Cremorne, I believe it is. Hayden Orpheum. I've seen it on film, projected off film. 70mm film. Actual celluloid. That's what it's called. It's called celluloid. Those aspect ratios are, I believe, 2:20:1, meaning you're seeing more cropping, but you are watching celluloid. You're watching the way Nolan would have shot, even though it's a bigger version of celluloid for 1570 1570 film is fascinating, but it's basically 15 perforations. The little holes on the side of the film are perforations. 70mm might have, I believe, 5 perforations, if I'm correct. I don't know, fact checking on that. But when you're looking at the IMAX ones, when you're looking at something truly to fill a massive screen like an IMAX screen, sometimes you're talking 6-7 stories for these screens sometimes. You're basically showing it at 18K because you're getting huge negatives. So, when you're watching it on film, you're watching it closer to the way Nolan intended, but also you're losing aspect. I don't know what's going on with me right now. But when you're watching, and here's the thing, there is no way in Sydney, one of the biggest cities in Australia, maybe even the biggest city in Australia. Sorry, Melbourne. Sorry, I know we're always competitive with Melbourne, but like Sydney, in terms of population, I believe it is the biggest city in the world, or the biggest city in Australia, I should say, in Australia. Why do we not have an IMAX that can show the Nolan version as intended from 1570 film celluloid onto a screen that is 1:43:1 and displayed in the correct aspect ratio? Sydney needs a second IMAX, a proper second IMAX. I know Blacktown exists. I know people enjoy Blacktown's IMAX. I'm not knocking the Blacktown IMAX. If that's all you have, I would say see the Odyssey in that rather than nothing. But what I'm talking about is Sydney need a second IMAX. Sydney truly need a second IMAX, a proper second IMAX. And don't just put it at Parramatta, because I know there's this obsession at the moment with business and corporations to put everything at Parramatta. But Parramatta is a new CBD. It's the CBD now. A lot of businesses have moved out of Sydney's central business district, the heart of Sydney, to go to Parramatta because it's cheaper, there's more incentive to hold it in the geographical centre of Sydney, which Parramatta falls in the geographical centre of Sydney. But I also want to talk about why I think something like Olympic Park would be a better fit. With Olympic Park, and this goes back to how Sydney's IMAX used to be. Sydney at one point had the biggest IMAX in the world. We had a screen that was like 35 metres by, I believe it was 29 metres. We're talking about something that was truly massive. I remember seeing it as a kid. I don't know if I ever saw a movie on that massive screen. I might have saw a scene on that screen when I was ducking out of, so they used to have 2 screens. They used to have one that would show the space station and stuff like that, I believe. I watched one on the space station, and then as we were leaving, I believe they were showing a part of a movie in there. It might have been The Dark Knight, it might have been something else. But I quickly popped my head in and I saw it, and I was like, whoa, that is massive. And then any other time, they'll just have the world's biggest screen on the center of the screen when you pop your head in. I believe there is a way to have Australia hold the record, or of Australia or Sydney hold the biggest record. Sorry, Melbourne. But Melbourne's the biggest in Australia at the moment. So Melbourne, I'll give you props. Your IMAX is better than Sydney's. In terms of what the offering is, you're showing up from celluloid and you're showing it on the biggest screen in the Southern Hemisphere, I believe. I don't know if it's true, but it's the biggest film in the Southern Hemisphere that shows celluloid. But Sydney could have something truly magnificent at Olympic Park. And why do I say Olympic Park rather than Parramatta? It would seem like, oh, Parramatta has all the transport. Why would you not hold it at Parramatta? Well, Parramatta is congestion. Parramatta is everything's at Parramatta. You could have a cinema at Parramatta. They have pretty good Westfield there. They have a pretty good Westfield. But then your problem is, where do you build something truly mega? I think Olympic Park is a district that has been slowly dying since the Olympics in 2000. Now, I'm not saying it's dead. Every now and again, there will be an event at the Sydney Superdome, which is now, I believe, Afterpay Arena. I believe they call it Afterpay Arena, or it used to be Kudos Bank, but I just still call it the Sydney Superdome. There'll be a concert at the Sydney Superdome. I saw Linkin Park there twice in March. Freaking awesome. I also saw Wu-Tang Clan. Anyways, they can hold something in there, and that'll bring people to the precinct. Next door, you have the Olympic Stadium. You have Stadium Australia, which I believe now goes by, what's the current name of that? I think, I still call it Telstra Stadium for some reason. Is it, It was ANZ for a bit as well. I don't know what it's called anymore. I still call it Stadium Australia or Telstra Stadium because a lot of NRL fans remember the old days of Ray Warren saying Telstra Stadium, and you know, people remember. But sometimes you'll see an event in there, like I remember going to see Kiss there in 2023. The same day, if you know the day, you know the day, but I saw it on October 7. The same day that the world changed, or a part of the world changed. That's when we started seeing a lot of images in the world. But also, let's not go into that. If people get in the comments and start going feral in the comments about that aspect of my video, I'm just going to start blocking people. But what I want to talk about is when you see an event like Kiss, when you see an event like the Foo Fighters. I never went and saw the Foo Fighters, but I know the Foo Fighters sold that whole stadium out. I know Oasis did the same thing. I believe Oasis sold out the stadium. I see people going to this stadium for the NRL Grand Final and NRL games. They will get a good crowd for NRL home games. They'll get a good crowd for like Bulldogs and who else play there? Rabbitohs and stuff like that. The home games there. They'll get a good crowd. It's not the biggest crowd, but it does bring people to the precinct. Realistically, the only time that stadium's at capacity is when a massive concert that everyone wants to see comes there. Taylor Swift sold it out, obviously 4 nights in a row. I don't think it was ever done before Taylor Swift. But look at the stadium. You see it sell out for State of Origin. You see it sell out. State of Origin is an NRL game where it's Queensland versus New South Wales. And I believe, did New South Wales win it this year? Tell me, Queenslanders, did we win it this year? I won't stir you, Queensland. I won't stir you. Anyways, why I say Olympic Park, and also they have the Angie Stadium, Giant Stadium, the AFL Giant Stadium next door, which is Angie at the moment. I see AFL games get a consistent crowd there as well. So why am I saying Sydney Olympic Park? Because Sydney Olympic Park, outside of these events, is essentially dead for a lot of the year. There's no reason to go to Olympic Park unless you work there, unless you're staying at a hotel there, or unless there is something going on that you need to be there for. There's not an incentive to be at Olympic Park. What if you built the biggest IMAX in the world at Sydney's Olympic Park? And there's definitely a lot of room to do something like that. But what do you do when you build the biggest IMAX there? You have car parks there, the infrastructure's there, the rail there, that's getting converted into a light rail, I believe, that will get more consistent trains. But do you understand what I'm saying? Olympic Park isn't congested like Parramatta. There is room to build. There is also an incentive that a truly magnificent IMAX that shows 1570 film, bring back the film projectors, celluloid, but have dual lasers. Have one that shows laser projections any other time of the year, but have the film projector there so when you want to do an event like show The Dark Knight, show Interstellar, you can show it on celluloid as Christopher Nolan intended. I know that's a meme at the moment. But this is where I start saying, I'm not going to Melbourne. I'm just not. If I can't see it in Sydney, look, I'm not going to get a ticket in Melbourne regardless. There's no way I can get a ticket to the Melbourne one. Trust me, if I could get a ticket to the Melbourne one and it was a month away where I had time to plan, I would go and see it in Melbourne. I'm not knocking Melbourne at all. I'm just saying I wouldn't go to Melbourne. I'm not going to Melbourne to watch a film that should be available in Sydney. That should be available to the world. There are only about 40-something IMAXs in the world that can show the Odyssey the way Christopher Nolan intended. On 1570 film, which is 15 perforations. When I say 15, it means the perforations are little holes in the side of the film. And 70mm. There's only about 40 cinemas in the world. Melbourne have one of them. I believe Melbourne might even be the only one in the Southern Hemisphere that has that celluloid projector. And then you have the Sydney IMAX that can show it in one of the third biggest screen in the world, I believe Sydney is at this point. We used to have the biggest, which is kind of annoying. But for laser projection, for something like anything else that you'll watch on that screen, like maybe you watch a Top Gun Maverick on that, I'm sure it'll look great because laser projection is great. There is no right or wrong way to enjoy a movie. So let's state that right now before I go on to this next aspect. This is going to be a longer video, by the way, so sorry if you're sticking with me through this one. But aspect ratios matter. When people feel like they're getting ripped off by not seeing the whole image, people won't go and see it. People will go and see a movie, don't get me wrong. There are film fans who will say, I'd rather see it on 70mm standard rather than not at all. I know Randwick Ritz and I know Hayden Orpheum at Cremorne are getting good audiences. I know they're getting good audiences for the Odyssey on celluloid. They are getting good audiences. It's shown in 2:20:1 aspect ratio, but it is still an experience. And this is film as an experience. I love that we're seeing, especially independents like Randwick and Hayden Orpheum, I love that independent cinemas are shining at this time because they kept their film projectors. Sydney needs a true second IMAX, but also we need a purpose-built one. We need a massive screen that's owned by IMAX, that has its film projector, and also its laser projector. If you want to have the laser projector, give a truly magnificent experience, but it should resurrect an area. It shouldn't just be placed in the center of Parramatta or, I mean, Blacktown has one, as I said, but Blacktown is a different aspect ratio. It's 1:90:1. Because Sydney's the biggest city in Australia in terms of population. Sydney should have a IMAX. And it's kind of terrible that we don't. Now also audiences. The Darling Harbour IMAX can only fit about 300 to 400 people in that cinema at capacity. I think it's 300, but it might be 400. It could be somewhere in that range. And I don't know if the front seats are counted as part of that, but if you're sitting in the front, you're just looking up at a screen. I want to see an IMAX that has the capacity the old IMAX had. I think the old IMAX in Sydney, before they tore it down, had a capacity of like 1,000. And please don't build a hotel on it, because IMAXs should be running consistently, especially with something like an event. We've seen them, the Sydney IMAX, open up sessions at 6:15 in the morning, 7:15 at the morning, because there's been such demand for the Odyssey. We need cinemas to open all night. We need cinemas that are showing playings all night. And you can't really do that when you have a hotel built on top of it. Because, you know, customers and people staying with you have a right to not hear massive bass check in the whole building. Now, I know IMAX might control that. But also, the next aspect I want to talk about is the home release. And with Project Hail Mary, for example, Amazon haven't commented on what we're getting at home. They've said, I think they put the digital version out, the version you can buy on iTunes and stuff like that. I don't know, iTunes doesn't exist anymore, I don't think. I think it's Apple TV, they just call it now. But I think Amazon have said that it's cropped. It's not the version. It will fill your screen, but it will not be the version that was shown in IMAX. Now, my understanding is that there is speculation that the Blu-ray, the 4K Blu-ray, will have a special disc in there that is the correct aspect ratio, 1:43:1, and switches. But also, when I look at Nolan, when I look at a film that was shot completely in 1570, we need the black bars on the side. We need to see what, like, people will watch IMAX films. People will watch IMAX and watch the black bars. This was 1:33:1, by the way. But also with films like Tenet, with films like Oppenheimer, when it comes to Blu-ray, they're often cropped. You'll see a film that's a lot more in line with, I believe, 178:1 or 185:1. So you'll see it fill your whole TV, your 16:9 TV, but it's still cropping the IMAX images. Now with The Dark Knight, when Blu-ray was out, they also put out a release of The Dark Knight that had the IMAX scenes on a 6th disc in a box set. So the IMAX scenes were released on Blu-ray, but they're not on the 4Ks. With Oppenheimer, a film that was shot like, I believe, 80% in IMAX, it really should be available. And maybe they did include something in here. Maybe they did include a notification in here. So they have the Blu-ray featurette, but there is no aspect ratio that says 2:20:1. They have 2:20:1 and 178:1 for Oppenheimer. And for a film like this, I believe this should have had the IMAX disc in it. I believe this had enough room to have an IMAX disc in it. I just think we're getting to this point now where movies need to be preserved on physical media, as games do as well. We've seen where Sony are coming with that. But also, if anyone was going to do it, it would be Christopher Nolan. Nolan loves physical media. I've seen his Criterion Collection thing. I did love it. It was pretty cool. But also, Nolan loves preservation. He loves film. He loves giving the audience an experience. Now, typically when Nolan releases films on Blu-ray, the problem has been this shifting aspect ratios. As I mentioned with Oppenheimer, you have 2:20:1, which will show the black bars, and then it opens up into the other aspect ratio, the one that's more in line with what as much as you can show that fill your screen. And the problem in the past has been the jarring aspect ratio changes. If you're going from something with black bars to then going black bars from the side, it can be a bit jarring for the audience. But I believe audiences are at this point now where people, if they want to watch that film, will watch that film the way it was intended. As we've seen with Zack Snyder's Justice League and Batman vs Superman on 4K, these new ones. People will watch it. But it has to be available. And I would hate to see Nolan... I'd hate to see Nolan, like, kind of underestimate the demand. There are a lot of people who cannot see his film, The Odyssey, and didn't get to see Oppenheimer in the aspect ratio, and didn't get to see The Dark Knight in its aspect ratio, who didn't get to see Interstellar in its aspect ratio. Now, there are films in his filmography that didn't shoot in IMAX. I believe Interstellar is one of them. Oh, not Interstellar, what's it called? Inception. Sorry, I always get them mixed up. Interstellar did have IMAX scenes. Inception didn't. And films before The Dark Knight didn't. I believe Batman Begins didn't have any IMAX scenes. But there are films. Memento didn't have it. I don't believe it. They didn't have an IMAX. But a lot of Nolan's shooting in past years has been IMAX. And we're at this point now where society, especially film lovers, are the ones collecting 4K Blu-ray. Now with digital, I understand if Nolan said, no, for digital, we're putting out 178:1 for digital. That's the way it should be delivered for digital. But with 4K Blu-ray, I believe there's enough audience there to say, hey, someone is paying for a movie. Someone is paying for an experience. Someone wants to display this on a shelf. It should be shown the way it was intended. It's just my thought. And I wish Nolan sees this video, because I'm a film fan. Obviously. And I'm a physical media fan. I can't get a ticket to the Sydney IMAX. It's sold out in the seats that are acceptable. I'm not going to be sitting under a screen looking up and getting neck strain. But I believe... I'm just trying to formulate my thoughts here, because if Nolan was to ever watch my video, and if you guys want to clip this up and send it to Christopher Nolan, he doesn't have social media though, but if Christopher Nolan ever sees this, I hope that he would look at possibly revisiting like a Dark Knight Anniversary Edition on 4K Blu-ray that has like the IMAX scenes built in on a special disc, or like have a special edition with all of them and then show them separately. But the IMAX scenes on 4K could work, and I need to see more IMAX. Interstellar especially. Interstellar is one of my favourite films, and that does not show the IMAX scenes in this. It shows an IMAX version, but not as intended. As with Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer also doesn't show the aspect ratio of IMAX 1:43:1. They show a version that is chopped down from the IMAX. It shows the IMAX scenes that will fill your screen. But these, they don't contain the way they were shot. It doesn't contain 1:43:1. And while they're still an enjoyable experience, as I said, one of my favourite films, I want to see these on home release. Now, it depends whether IMAX would also be partnering to say, hey, we want these films at home, but that won't hurt the audience. I believe Nolan might take the stance of, and we don't know what Nolan's thinking, but I think we should, having it on Blu-ray will not hurt the audience, will not hurt people going back to IMAX to rewatch it, because you're seeing it on a 6-story, sometimes 5, 6-story screen. There is no competition regardless of what TV you have. You could fill your whole screen at your house. You could get the Samsung wall that has 200 and something inches, and it still won't match IMAX. Now, I also saw Screen X for Spider-Man. I love that Spider-Man's tearing up the box office at the moment, as is The Odyssey. I believe Spider-Man hit the $1 billion mark already, or came close to it. I think it was 900 and something million opening weekend, which is freaking insane. The only thing I've seen do that was Endgame. But cinema is alive. To think that Netflix came out 2-3 years ago and said no one wants to go to cinemas anymore. Case in point. Oppenheimer did the same thing. Barbenheimer, I should say. But, you know, Barbenheimer did the same thing, bringing audience back to cinemas. And for a while, when people put slop in cinemas, when people put stuff in there like, hey, put Supergirl out. Hey, put this movie up because we need to reboot the DCU. There's a reason why it fails. There's reasons why people will go and see the Backrooms rather than go and see Supergirl. And this is why DC's in the shape it's in. Because of bull... I'm wearing an NWO shirt, I know. But because of BS like this. People want to see a good film. They want an experience. When you see Tom Holland in what's probably going to be his final Spider-Man for at least a while, I'm sure he'll show up in not Endgame, what is it, Secret Wars or Doomsday or something. He'll show up in one of them probably, more than likely. I'd rather see Andrew Garfield and Toby show up, but I think Tom Holland could take a rest. He's well deserved to take a rest after this showing for Spider-Man. But also, when it's an event, when there's a true experience to be had, the audience will show up at cinemas. It's the reason why when Dark Knight shows at cinemas in IMAX, it sells out. I went and saw The Dark Knight when it re-showed in IMAX, the new Sydney IMAX. It looked phenomenal. And you had those IMAX scenes open up for the full screen. It looked phenomenal. That said, I still want to watch it at home when it's not re-showing in IMAX. And I hope Nolan would consider it. That we want these films on physical media in the aspect ratio they were intended. 143:1 black bars. Have one that's 178:1. The first disc can be that, but then have disc 2 be, hey, this is the special features, but also we have the movie presented in the original aspect ratio. That's the way to do it. That's no reason why it can't be done. For digital, it's a bit more tedious, but I understand. If Spider-Man on Amazon, you know, the Nicolas Cage one, if that can have watch it in color or no color, then you can create an option that has, hey, watch this in 143:1 or watch this in 16:9, the way you fill your TV. But have separate discs. Have one that's fit for purpose. You look at the top of it and it says IMAX original aspect. Have one that says, well, I don't know, 185:1 or 178:1. The audience can choose, especially if you're buying a Blu-ray. Because someone's made the educated choice to say, hey, I want to go out and buy that movie. I want that in my collection. I want that displayed on my shelf because I want to see that. But maybe I'm just ranting here. Shifting aspect ratios matter. I mean, I'm just going to quickly do a quick run through. I'm going to try to stand center screen. So this is 276:1, which is how Quentin Tarantino would have shot The Hateful Eight. Then you have 235:1. You also have 239:1 there. I'll do 239:1 looks like this. This is how people are showing standard showings of the Odyssey in cinemas. But then you also have 235:1, which is typically how things like Titanic are shown. Then you have 220:1, which is basically how 70mm film will be shown, like celluloid in the Ramrick Ritz, and I believe Hayden Orpheum also shown in this aspect. Then you have 185:1, 178:1. Now, there's not much distinction here. One does have the black bars, one a little bit of black bars, one doesn't. Basically, these are your 16:9 screens. This is what will fit on your screen at home. Then you have 166:1, which is this aspect ratio. Black bars coming in from the side now. This is how Rocky Horror Picture Show is shot. Then you have, obviously the next aspect ratio is 143:1. This is how Nolan shot the Odyssey in this aspect ratio. Now, obviously, there's a difference because obviously you would see more headroom, you'd see more bottom. I think I will shoot a bit on this in Blackmagic, but I'll show you what it will look like later on. I will shoot a tiny bit of it, but this is how it would look. This is how it would look if you saw it in IMAX. And then you have 133:1, which this is the Hollywood standard for years and years. This was 133:1. A lot of old films, this is how Zack Snyder's Justice League is shown, 133:1, which is 4:3. Your old TVs, your old CRTs, this is the aspect ratio. Old TV shows, this is the aspect ratio. But aspect ratios matter. And this is filling your screen again. This is a lot in line with 185:1, I believe, closer to 185:1. Or 178:1, I could be wrong, but either way, it's going to fill your TV. Aspect ratios matter. And I think we need to start considering how we're preserving these films. Nolan does a great job with this already. Nolan's probably the best director in Hollywood at the moment because he cares about physical media. He cares about how the experience is. He cares about his films. He cares about how people are interacting with his films. He cares when he shot it that, hey, not everyone's going to have access to the one of the 40, I think it might be 41 or 43 aspect ratio correct IMAXs in the world. And out of those, you might only see, I don't know how many of them have film projectors, maybe that's the film projector ones. But how many of them show it on celluloid? I just think Nolan, when he does the physical media release, should consider giving us the aspect ratio correct version. And while I'm on it, Sydney needs a second IMAX. That brings back the film projector. Bring back our celluloid projector. And while we're at it, let's do a 40-meter screen. Why not? Do it at Olympic Park. Build it as big as you possibly can. Build it at the same size as Stadium Australia. I don't know, just do something truly magnificent. Bring back our Sydney IMAX, the old screen. But also, you can't do an old screen because it was too big. But, you know what I'm saying? Events matter. People are going to cinema for events. Not because, hey, we released a new Supergirl movie. Sorry, I'm picking on Supergirl a lot, but it shows. People didn't go and see Black Adam for the same reason. Because, yeah, it was The Rock in a superhero movie, but it's also, The Rock. I'd rather go and see Barbenheimer. I'd rather go and see Top Gun Maverick. You know, the audience chose with their wallets. And if Nolan puts out the correct versions of his filmography, like The Dark Knight, Dark Knight Rises, Interstellar, Tenet even. What else is there? Oppenheimer. People will rebuy these 4K Blu-rays because you say, hey, this has the correct aspect ratio. We will rebuy them. We're idiots, film fans. We kind of buy everything. I bought 2 versions of Jurassic Park. We're not idiots. Sorry. If anyone takes offense to that, I'm talking about myself. I'm an idiot. I'll go and rebuy it if I get a different aspect ratio. I'll go and do it again. But I think we need to start seeing more preservation. More of this preservation comes through. It bleeds through. And I think we need to start seeing it. Thanks for watching, guys. I will end this with an IMAX enhanced version. But thanks for watching. I want you to like, subscribe, drop a comment. We're almost at 5,000. And while you're at it, watch a couple of these videos here. I'll put a couple on the sides. There you go. Watch a couple of them. And yeah, tell me what you think. Have you seen the Odyssey? I haven't because I want to see it in correct aspect ratio. I'm holding out. But also I will end up seeing if it's going to go out of cinemas, I'm going to see it. But let me know what you thought. Peace.